Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Koski of Fun Day back at it once again, kicking it for you and for yours. And before I get started, I give my ancestors, the glory. Thank you, ancestors. Getting close to my solar year return, you know what I'm saying, making it back on through. And I let it get credit for the ancestors, you know what I'm saying, for guiding me on my journey and putting me on a proper path. Also like to thank you, the watcher and the subscriber, for tuning into the video, dropping this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. I'm very humble and grateful, what I'm saying, to you and to yours, and much love to y'all. This video right here is going to deal with the UNIA in Colorado Springs and Denver, Colorado. You know what I'm saying? A quick backdrop. Many people don't know that the Klan back in the 1920s, Indiana was a major Klan spot. Many people don't know that. But who came in number 2 was Colorado, which I didn't know that until I really did some research on that. You know what I'm saying? Where the Klan controlled the whole state, from governor on down. You know what I'm saying? Just like they did in Indiana. So more history gonna come out on that too, to find out the Klan was controlling a lot more than just these 2 states. You know what I'm saying? From the top to bottom. Especially these 2 they naming during the 1920s is far from the South. You know what I'm saying? So that should make you think some more too. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna get into this wonderful story. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me, I'm gonna start right here. In a special publication written by the Negro Historical Association of Colorado Springs, 1986, titled Black Settlers of Pike Peak Region, 1850 to 1999. It is noted that during the time of the movement west to California, a number of pioneer Black families found Colorado an appealing location to resettle. In the years that followed the Civil War, Black settlers from the South migrated to the city with their masters. One such example was Frank Looper, who was born in Mississippi on a plantation of Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Looper migrated to Colorado Springs in 1886 with his overseer left Mississippi. Some years later, other Black families, workers, and professionals relocated to Pike Peak area because it was known as a place where they could find rest and relaxation from Jim Crow segregation and racial discrimination in the South. As Black populations began to increase, African American professionals and their families discovered other reasons to relocate to the area. As Colorado Springs area became known as a health resort, some Black pioneer families relocated for health reasons. By the turn of the 20th century, pioneer Blacks in Colorado Springs area either owned various businesses or held limited middle and working class occupations. Holly, 1990, explained how Jim McCurney, who was believed to be the city's first Black butcher during the 1920s, was a meat cutter at James Thompson's grocery on the East Coast across the street north of the courthouse, a grocery occupation which McCurney himself financed. Also among the few Black-owned stores were the grocery stores of Adam Jones. Other Black-owned businesses include 2 weekly newspapers in Colorado Springs, The Enterprise, which is founded and edited by P.S. Simpson, and the Colorado Springs Suns, which was edited by Z.M. Booker with W.H. Duncan as the city editor. And with the departure of Dr. R.S. Grant in 1919, the only Black senator in Colorado Springs, Dr. Isaac Edward Moore, who immigrated from St. Louis, Missouri, opened a practice from his home on 317 West Monumental Street in 1920. A year later, Moore announced the opening of his Lincoln Sanatorium for colored people in a 2.5-story red brick building house on the 300 block of West Lemonette, a sanatorium with provisions for 10 patients with plans to accommodate them that many more with soon additional equipment could be acquired. In addition, there was the Sadler brothers, who was well known as builders and remodelers of homes, and Ed Beckwith, who was known as a Exception Caterer. Blacks were also successful as farmers and ranchers. Among the large farms and ranches at the time were William Seymour, located in the Black Forest area. He raised dairy cattle and supplied milk to various dairy outlets in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs was also known as a city of churches and schools. At first, there were no religious structures in the town for African Americans to worship. But this soon changed as four brothers from the Carter family, known as the African Methodist Episcopal, the AME congregation, pooled their resources together and immediately began construction of some donated property obtained through the Colorado Springs Company on Pueblo Avenue and South Webster Street. Dorothy Bay Spahn remembers in an interview with Ines Hunt and Black Pioneers, the history of a pioneer family in Colorado Springs, how the building which followed eventually became Payne Chapel AME Church. Soon, other church structures such as the People Methodist Episcopal Church followed these developments. As early as March of 1903, a small group of former slaves and children of former slaves who had been meeting, praying, and playing for over a year began construction of a new church. The new church building was erected on the corner of North Oak Street and East St. Vrain Street. In 1904, the minister to the pastor of this new church structure was Reverend C.W. Holmes, who served the congregation from March 1903 until August 1905. Because of the nature of their job, many of the members of the church had to work on Sunday mornings and were able to attend morning services. An afternoon service was established to better serve the majority of the fellowship. The leading charter member of the church was Frank Looper, who served as a member of the church trustee board and the church first building committee. Between Looper's active membership and the participation of the new pastor and the membership, People Methodist was extremely active in supporting civil affairs events for the community. The church also serves as the headquarters of the Colorado Springs UNIA Division 508. At the time of these developments in Colorado Springs, African immigrants were also rushing to Denver to find work and their fortune in silver and gold. Denver seemed to be the perfect place to begin a new life. As African Americans were escaping oppression and racism from the post-Civil War South, many found work laying track for railroad companies. This, according to Laura Mock, enabled Denver to become a major trade center for the West. By 1890, Denver had a population of over 100,000. In this special report produced by R. Laurie Simmons and Thomas A. Simmons, entitled Denver Neighborhood History Project 1993, 5 Points Neighborhood, which is commissioned by the city and the county of Denver. The data indicates that segregation in Denver, because it was segregation everywhere in the United States, north, south, east, west, confined African American citizens, particularly to portions of the lower downtown and the 5 Points neighborhood. The Black population of Denver had grown rapidly in the city population as a whole during the 1870s and the 1880s, increasing from 237 in 1870 to 3,000 in 1890. Initially, the demographic area of the 5 Points area was white with large Irish, German, and Jewish population. The community was named in 1881 for the five-way intersection of Welton Street, 27th Avenue, Washington Street, and 26th Street. Curtis Park District, which is within the 5 Points area, was considered the most luxurious streetcar suburb of Denver in the 1880s. But by 1893, after the wealthy were moved on from prominent poor neighborhoods such as Capitol Hill to the south, Black Americans began moving to the area. Prior to the 1890s, the Denver African American population was scattered through the city. But as Denver overall population grew, the area known as the 5 Points became the heart of the African American community. Denver's small African American community would continue to grow during the early part of the 20th century. And the 5 Point area played an important part in African American social, political, and economic history. The 5 Points neighborhood matured as a significant Black business section of the city during the 1920s. The 1920 census indicated a total of 6,000 African American residents in Denver, an increase of 649 or 12% from 1910. The continued black migration from the South created a political, economic, and cultural base for businesses in the Black 5 Point area. In addition to migration of attorneys, physicians, surgeons, and bombers, there was the establishment of Douglas Undertaking, Rosanna Hotel, although originally built as the Baxter Hotel in 1912, and the only white-owned Atlas Drug Store, which is built in 1911. Denver was the home of two black-owned newspapers, both of which were founded during the late 19th century. Both the Colorado Statesman and the Denver Star, in current exchange through efforts of editors of both papers and the promotion of the civil rights issue. For example, Joseph D. Rivers, editor of the Colorado Statesman and close friend of Booker T. Washington, used this newspaper to encourage blacks to come out west and invest in real estate and establish a business. Essentially, Welcher Street from 22nd to 29th Street served as the main street of Denver's black community by the mid-1920s. The Welcher Street Business District of the 5 Points in the 1920s not only attracted a variety of businesses such as restaurants, tailors, real estate agencies, saloons, pool halls, doctors, dentists, and a branch of American Women Insurance Company, but also serves as an important resource site for residents in the community. Simmons and Simmons further explain the many different aspects in which the business and social arrangement will actualize. As in other parts of the city, the emergence of a small business district will provide the needs for those who are in the immediate area with a tremendous significance in development of community. Local businessmen serve as role models for neighborhood children, and their enterprise symbolize success and stability. Often these local businessmen became leaders within the community and were granted added status among their peers. Local business establishments became meeting places for the entire community, where the issue of relevance to a neighborhood were discussed. In addition, the owner of the businesses in the district, aided by their neighbors, by extending credit, helped many survive and recover from hard times. The social purpose that the business emphasized one of the bonds that the black family held to the 5 Points neighborhood together. However, the most enduring institution responsible for the gluing the community together was the church. The church in the 5 Point neighborhood played a pivotal role in the lives of the community residents, serving as a kind of settlement house and social club. Black churches offer incoming migrants a permanent residence, a place they can call home away from home. As elsewhere in the country, black churches function as houses of worship, providing both members and visitors opportunities for Christian fellowship. Meaningful sermons from the distinguished pastors, invited guest speakers such as U.N.I.A. and NAACP officials, and the first-rate secular sites for community networking. Shorter AME Church, for example, was the first African-American church established in Colorado. Organized in Denver in 1868 by Bishop Thomas M.G. Ward, a pioneer of African Methodism in the West, Shorter AME became, with its rich history in the community, fulfilled multiple needs of black residents of the 5 Point area. As in other black communities throughout the country, a number of similar and different religious denominations developed, calling for the building of other church structures. The Scott Methodist Congregation, which traces its roots back to 1904, was established as Denver's only United Methodist denomination to serve blacks at the time. Scott Methodist purchased a building originally belonged to the Church of Christ congregation on 22nd and Olden Street. Racial residential segregation was rampant in Denver. So too was the Ku Klux Klan. Born alongside W.D. Griffin's film Birth of a Nation, the Klan in Denver, which was organized in the early 1920s, functioned according to historian Carl Abbott, F.N.J. Leonard, and David McComb, authors of Colorado, A History of Centennial State, as such a blow to the obvious outsider who was pushing their way into positions formerly held by native-born citizens. Jews and African Americans were from McComb of self-respect were bad enough. Roman Catholics were worse. They represent the spearheaded conspiracy against the Puritan civilization that made the country great. At the same time, the average Klan member worried about the peace of his community and the honor of his daughter. The fear of change and the difference that were facing the driving forces that inspired the Klan. The changing demographic of face of residential life, to some extent, employment of the dynamics in Denver, accelerated racial and religious tensions in the city. In its first year, Denver Klan followed the national pattern, mixing petty violence and harassment with confidentiality. For Friday night entertainment, the Klan members were roused in an hour caravan through the Jewish neighborhood on West Colfax, honking their horns and shouting insults. The local NAACP suffered Klan threats, and at least one African American who allegedly failed to observe the code of interracial contact was driven out of town. During the 1920s, KKK participation, according to historian Abbott, was at an all-time high in Denver, and some 50,000 Coloradans were members, making it second only to Indiana. Some Klan members were even elected officials. This includes Colorado's Governor Clarence Mosley, who served in the state from 1925 to 1927. Denver's Mayor Benjamin Shelton, who served the city from 1923 to 1931, and Denver's police chief. Moreover, the community surrounding Five Points were formed neighborhoods improvement associations, which created covenants that banned residents from selling their homes or properties to non-whites. The politics in Colorado in the progressive era left African Americans with no choice but to create an internal progressive era opportunities, which resulted in a number of progressive Black thinkers. Targeting the Five Point neighborhood at the end of February, during the first 2 weeks of March 1921, Brooks delivered a speech of well-received public address before a large audience of several of Denver's Black churches and community halls. Speaking first at the People's Presbyterian Church, Brooks discussed the Black Star Line shipping company, the Negro construction loan, and the redemption for Africa. Nearly 300 persons were present at these events. Despite the revival service being held in two other leading churches of the city, Brooks swayed the audience with his powerful appeal of race solidarity, race maintenance, and participating in the good life, proving again that the intelligence and experience permeating the Negro of today was making a determination to stand for real liberty, justice, and a place of recognition in the world for its contributions to civilization and the propagation of that democracy which knows no bounds. Among the impressive expression that fell from the Secretary General's lips, this guy's the Secretary General, Brooks is the Secretary General. Among the impressive expression that fell from the Secretary General's lips was that every race has to answer the racial call quicker than and earlier than ours. Our cause is not against the white man, but Negroes who have not measured up, and even when given a vision, refuse to accept. The white man prepares to live while we prepare to die, even though we are aware that death is inevitable. Members of various church organizations were in attendance and applauded these addresses as Brooks spoke at Fern Hall, St. Stephen Baptist Church, and at 32nd Avenue and Lafayette Street, Central Baptist Church, and Campbell A&E Chapel. At the division meeting to follow, an increase of 100% in membership was reported, as were the subscriptions of nearly 2/3 of the division quota and a Black Star Line steamship company and a Liberian construction loan. As Denver Division membership continued to increase, an emphasis was placed on the youth of the Five Points community, who were being energized by electrifying influences and the spirit of the movement. Fathers, mothers, grandparents understood that parental control and training in home was essential for having a sound mind and a sound body. This emphasis prepared young adults for life, battles, and shoulder responsibility was employed to achieve and accomplish goals toward the redemption of Africa. With the news of addition of the Phyllis Wheatley to the Black Star Line fleet, the Denver division gave credit to New York headquarters for having a ship large enough to accommodate nearly 2,000 passengers and all equipment for modern traveling. A fundraiser calling for a dollar drive to help furnish equipment for the Phillips Wheatley was being encouraged of each member through the exhibiting photographs of the ship. Denver division leaders emphasized that the ship would be capable of carrying 4,500 tons of cargo and large numbers of passengers. Despite being identified as really a small population in Colorado, there was some very rich Black community history institutional building in Colorado Springs and Denver, Colorado. The Black population of Denver, although once confined and isolated to the Five Points neighborhood, constituted the largest in the state, where the second largest was located in the St. Vane neighborhood of Colorado Springs. However, with the rapid rise of Garveyism and the phenomenal growth of Garvey UNIA-ACL, there is no doubt that Colorado's rich Black history needs continued documentation. Oral history interviewing the interactive research was useful in my discoveries of the perspective of the family members in the community and their interpretation of the history of UNIA activism in their communities. These in-depth face-to-face oral history interviews were encouraged the interviewee to assign a meaning of what they heard, witnessed, and experienced growing up in their communities. So this is a lot of this came down from oral communities. And also you can look at as I do in most of mine, I got, you can look up in the Schomburg library too. Schomburg got a lot of stuff on the UNIA, man, but they got a lot of the paperwork on there. So this is about the UNIA in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, and Colorado Springs. How they protect themselves and how they made their money, how they consolidated both the Black neighborhoods in Colorado Springs and Denver. This is U.S. history, African history that's not really talked about. They need to go more in depth about, and speak on. But let's just speak on a little bit more while I got a little bit more time. An oral history interview with Richard Walker, whose parents were members and officers of this Colorado Springs division, and through a letter obtained through him was written by J.B. Yearwood, Assistant Secretary General of the parent body. Internal evidence was used to support this conclusion. In a letter which addressed to Reverend G. Sterling Starworth of the People Methodist Episcopal Church, dated January 12, 1922, Yearwood acknowledged the receipt for the sum of $32.50 as a required payment for a charter for Colorado Springs Division. Yearwood's later letter extended to Reverend Sawyer, who was the first division president, and to all the members of the Colorado Springs Division, a hearty welcome. In the months that followed, this letter occurred when numerous communication exchanges between Yearwood and Reverend Sawyers occurred. These exchanges focused on issues ranging from the request for buttons, news release from the two postponement of Garvey trials, to payments of new membership dues. However, with the plans of Garvey's travel to Colorado, I find this meant to be extremely important when I obtained a copy of the letter Garvey wrote to Reverend Sawyer dated May 2nd, 1922. In which he informs her he'd be touring the area and speaking in the interest of our UNIA spring and summer drive for new members and stirring up interest in the association. Garvey later detailed the following specifics. You are therefore to arrange immediately for this meeting in the church or hall for the night. You will please get as many of your members as you can, sing and recite, and take part in the concert program. You will also ask strangers to help in the program to make it a success. Please do not offer to pay anyone to sing or recite as to keep down our expenses. You will also try to get one or two local speakers to help us to make the program interesting. We would like a big crowd to attend these meetings. Please go ahead and make all the arrangements and get your circulars printed and boost the meeting. Admission is 50 cents. After expenses are paid, 1/2 of the net proceeds go to the parent body and 1/2 to your division. We shall accept no excuses from you, but that you and other officers will cooperate immediately for this meeting and make it a success. Prepare lodging for 2 ladies and 2 gentlemen. 2 ladies together and 2 gentlemen in separate rooms in the same building. With the very best wishes, I have the honor to be your obedient servant. Between the newspaper ladies working an interview, Walker and I discovered that Garvey arrived at Colorado Springs May 23rd, 1922, along with Amy Jacques, his personal secretary to sign, and Lillian Willis, orator, and Charles Zampe, auditor general. And speaking in a large interracial audience at the evening in May 23rd, 1922, at Perkins Hall on the campus of Colorado College, Garvey began his speech in classic Black nationalist UNIA form as the crowd greeted him and listened spellbound, stating, America is a white man's country. We are constantly reminded of the fact that it is indisputable. Africa is for the Negro, and it is there that we must make our future homes. Throughout the world are towering monuments to the accomplishment of the white man. The Negro must accomplish something noteworthy to win the respect of the world. And then he be ready to make for himself a nation in his God-given land. And one of the most forceful talks ever heard in Perkins Hall, according to Colorado Springs Gazette, Garvey, provisional president of the Negro Republic in Africa, and head of the UNIA, stated that the express aims of the association is to unite 400 million Negroes of the world together in one organization and to immigrate them with them to their native land and rightful home in Africa. Garvey, the article stated, had been called the second coming of Booker T. Washington and had done more towards the dreams of Washington than any of the great thinker himself. Garvey stated, we must establish a government and ourselves build an empire. I admit the manifold difficulties that will be entailed in the undertaking, but it can be done. It must reflect the nationality of the people as the nations of France, Germany, Italy, and other countries. Negroes are scattered all over the world. They have become accustomed to ways and customs of other lands, but there is not one that can call on their own. Africa is the only land on the face of the earth that we claim as ours. The Negro must set out and accomplish something to win the respect of the world. I do not preach hatred of the races. Instead, I will lavish praise upon a white man. But the Negro must, for obvious reason, find another land in which to live. Garvey scorned the idea that Africa held no opportunities for the black race, knowing that it was the richest continent in the world. His rich mineral deposit and huge wealth of mounting forests of mahogany and other valuable pieces of timber and various other natural resources were named. As long as the Negro waits to attain no goal, as long as he continue to be a slave and a servant, a great part of the blame of his condition rests upon himself. Let him make good. All right, I'm gonna stop right there. You know what I'm saying? But Garvey came out to this UNIA and had a good showing out there. And he came out to Colorado Springs at Denver, Colorado, and did his thing, as his story states. I'll leave the link in the description in the box so y'all can read it yourselves, stuff like that. Anywho, this is Coach Get Funny saying much love. You know what I'm saying? I love dropping this historical knowledge, especially about the groups like the UNIA, showing how powerful, how big it was, and how the black community will come together to do things. Anyway, hit the like and subscribe button because this is all we do is drop history. Black African history. Peace.